Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We're very excited to have you with us today. We'll be going through an introduction to CivoStack Enterprise and alternative options to VMware. Before we get started, I wanted to do a quick introduction to our two speakers today. So joining us first, we have Dinesh Madrekar. He has a background ranging from working in data centers to cybersecurity and hosting and so much more. Dinesh has a huge love for teaching others and sharing his passion for building products that seamlessly scale. So Dinesh will be talking a little bit later, and we're going to actually kick things off with Henry, who is our VP of Global Sales at Civo. And I'll go ahead and let Henry introduce himself and get things started today. So Henry, over to you.
Thank you, Sophia. Very kind introduction. And welcome everybody. Good afternoon and good morning. I'm going to start by just introducing who I am. So I'm Henry Godwin, and before leaving Broadcom in March of this year to join Civo, I led the Northern European cloud service provider business for VMware for 5 years. And this Northern European region was the largest by revenue and most diverse territory in the world for VMware. And also in terms of the number of CSPs and the product adoption rates beyond vSphere around the world. Before I hand over to Dinesh in a short while, I wanted to summarize what I'm going to cover. So first of all, we'll level set on the key impacts of the Broadcom acquisition of VMware on its partners and end customers. Secondly, then share the ability of Civo to meet the goal of simplicity and speed and value for money for users and partners. And then finally, I'm going to finish with a personal story about making decisions which at the time may feel like tough choices, but in fact are much better for you when looking back. So first, let's look at the impact of Broadcom. Broadcom's actions have actually created a very positive energy to change within organizations and partners and how they run and plan the future of their IT. A lot of people talk about it in a negative sense, but when you get such a large amount of turbulence at once, it creates many positives. The downsides are that the immediate impact is that, as you can see here, there's a number of different things impacting organizations with immediate effect. The first one being that increasing costs at 3x and above. Broadcom's mandate is to charge at least 3 times the price of renewals from day one with any renewal of perpetual licensing that comes up. And with regards to CSPs, with the change from a gigabyte VRAM model to a per core model, any CSP with a low density environment will have seen up to an 8x increase in the price of the same software. There's also uncertainty on pricing commitments. Because CSPs no longer use the VMware usage meters, they're uncertain about how many cores they should commit to, and subsequently everything uncommitted at a core level is then at a list price on demand. So there's a very, very significant commercial decision to make, which is really a finger in the air and a guess. Thirdly, the margin erosion from publicized pricing. With the price per core being published at $350, everybody knows the base price, and CSPs also know the discounts. So if they have to buy white label through a Pinnacle or a Premier partner, they know what to negotiate down to, and the Pinnacle partners now have a very thin margin for the privilege of aggregating their competitors' usage, and the risk that they then carry of committing cores to deliver those services rests with them. Fourthly, Broadcom has insisted on bundling unwanted products. So Broadcom forces CSPs to pay for the use of the full VCF stack, even though 80% of CSPs only ever really use vSphere and a few add-on products. And in the Northern EMEA region, there was a 20% penetration rate of add-on products with those service providers, and they were the most advanced region in the world. And also, partners are being disadvantaged by using VCF in its entirety. So for example, if you use vSAN, you have to license your DR 24/7, 365, because vSAN backup requires it. So Broadcom will say, use more of the stack to make it more cost effective, yet in effect, it's actually costing you more. And then there's the increased risks by white labeling. So white labelers, so Pinnacle and Premier Partners front that, all the other CSPs have to buy through them. And as a result, there is a requirement in the future, very near future, that those white labeled partners have to expose their end user details to the Pinnacle partners, who then have to report it back to Broadcom as a request of Broadcom. So you're exposing not only your commercial models, but also your own install base to your competition. And there's no way to escape that. Second to last, the inflexible billing for CSPs has effectively been removed. Whereas from April 2024, CSPs were, up until April 2024, CSPs were on a pay-go model, and therefore they could flex up and down to their minimum commit contracts. That value disappeared overnight when Broadcom insisted on a minimum core commit, and there's no option to decrease it in the 3-year commit period, only increase. And in addition, Broadcom can, as a part of the transaction document, so not the partner agreement, but the actual transaction document, they can increase the price 7% year over year. It's written in the document. So there's no doubt that Broadcom will take every opportunity to do that. And finally, by Broadcom buying VMware and unlocking customers and partners in, although VMware is also very, very good, it is essentially proprietary. And as a result, when acquired, end users and CSPs are locked in for longer because of the commercial impacts. Now, there is an alternative, and that alternative, dare I say it, is illustrated by Civo's CEO and founder, Mark Boost, when he says that the cloud, and when I say cloud, I mean private clouds, now that Broadcom has bought VMware, these on-premise private clouds, as well as public clouds, the clouds are broken. And what Civo is doing is reimagining cloud computing and setting the bar for what a modern cloud provider should look like if it was built today. And when I was working with my VMware pre-sales colleagues in the past, they said to me that when they evaluated Civo, if VMware was going to create VMware software today, they'd do it like Civo have done it. And when I say this, it's because the software has been built in such a way that it enables all the integrations that VMware stuck together to effectively not ever be coded in, because they were never ever needed to be coded in when you build a software stack like CivoStack from the ground up. But ultimately, what we're trying to do here is challenge the status quo of private cloud providers and hyperscale providers and proving that there's a better way. And this is what we're going to do through the course of this presentation. Just to put some meat on the bones in terms of substance behind Civo's evolution, this is an enterprise solution, and Civo's largest customer powers their $2 billion revenue business to host clients like Coca-Cola and L'Oreal, Nestle, Homebase. So the stack is built on very, very solid foundations, and it's designed to scale. And as a result of that, large organizations are very comfortable already in using the Civo stack to run their own businesses, because ultimately what we're providing here is a software layer to manage the infrastructure so no one has to worry about it when they're running their day-to-day business. IT isn't their business. What their business is effectively run on the IT. But let's look into the past before we look into the future. In the past, I'm quoting Andy Jassy here, the AWS CEO in 2012, the customers love the fact in the cloud they get to pay a lower variable expense than they can do on their own because of those economies of scale that were promised in terms of having access to large amounts of infrastructure, but because AWS can buy it at huge scale and therefore better pricing, passing on those price advantages to the consumer. Now, consider the fact these expectations were set 10 years ago. The reality is, well, actually, the same challenges exist today as they existed 10 years ago. Managing cloud spend is a significant cost burden. The security around cloud is still very vulnerable, and the lack of resources and expertise is still very much at the forefront of resourcing and employing people in IT departments. And what's more, not only is the overall cost of public clouds very expensive, more so often than actually running it yourself, but also FinOps departments have had to be created, so an additional human expense to be able to work out the best way to optimize the cost of using the public cloud in the first place. When 10, 12 years ago, the message was, we're going to help save you money, be more performant, and be more flexible. And the opposite seems to be happening. So what's Civo's mission? Civo's mission is that we want to build a cloud that is fair, is equitable, is open, which stays true to the original promise of the cloud by supporting business growth and not hindering customers through escalating costs or vendor lock-in or all the other things that are taken from your control. We want to be able to provide and give control back and meet those aspirations that were set 12 years ago and actually make them a reality. So much so that the work that Civo has already done has been recognized by Forbes and very kindly call Civo the hyperscaler shaker, and in effect provide a lightweight touch to what are equivalent of heavyweight clouds. And on top of that, some of the work that we've been doing over the years, and CivoStack is a 6-year in production technology, it's not a recent invention, is that we have great endorsements from very well-known names in the industry. Steve Wozniak, when he came and set up the clusters live at Navigate last year, he said, this is incredible. And getting a cluster up and running is super fast and simple. And we have additional endorsement from the likes of the Rancher co-founder, Darren Shepherd. And it's just great that they see the quality of the technology, have used it with all their own experience and capability and ability, we're able to very willingly share these kind of testimonials. So that gives me a lot of confidence that what we're talking about today is based on a significantly substantial base of investment, robustness, testing, building the software from the ground up by people who have been through the IT industry and scarred by the process for the last 25 years. So in effect, what Civo's doing is challenging the status quo in a very positive way. And we're reimagining cloud computing by lowering costs rather than increasing them, providing fair and predictable pricing rather than overpriced and unpredictable, reducing the complexity of the whole process. It should be simple so that people can run their businesses and the apps that run their businesses with comfort rather than worrying about managing those escalating cloud costs. And by supporting open standards, we're removing vendor lock-in. And by doing all of those things, combined with championing sustainable technologies, we believe that we can provide a service to the consumer that's going to be simpler, faster, and better value. So let me move to start with simpler. And I'm going to quote this, is that from Albert Einstein, genius is making complex ideas simple, not making simple ideas complex. And we're in a world right now where IT is becoming increasingly complicated when all that people want is simpler. So let's work together to reduce operational overheads, not increase them. And by providing a wide choice of automation tools, including our CLI, Terraform, Pulumi, and Crossplane options, it means that the consumer is in a much better place immediately from an operational standpoint, and then effortlessly manage it when it's set up. So we have a very powerful yet very simple user interface, which Dinesh will go and illustrate and show later on, and therefore enables people, I mean, I kid you not, the deploy and scale capability to do that across your infrastructure with ease is it blows your mind. When I first saw it, I was like, wow, is this stuff real? And yeah, it's absolutely real. And then when you've effortlessly managed it, you want to make sure there's frictionless adoption. So it's built on the best of open source technologies and removing the lock-in that I mentioned before. And then finally, you want a simple path to production. And therefore, by easily applying resilient security and cloud native best practices, you get all of these things in a much more easily manageable way. So moving from simpler to faster. Let me give you a couple of stats. Kubernetes launched in less than 90 seconds. Kubernetes clusters in less than 90 seconds. Compute instances in less than 60 seconds. Machine learning platform launches in less than 10 minutes. So the launch time and therefore getting to the meat of the work happens almost instantaneously. Then building faster within the CivoStack application front end, 90 plus marketplace apps, and therefore launch popular applications instantly from our marketplace that are managed and updated by Civo. And then finally, run faster. Because we're supporting open standards without lock-in and without other mandated standards, we're in a position where we can launch, build, and run. And from a data transfer speed, we're 3 times faster than hyperscalers. And from a storage point of view, 10 times faster than the hyperscaler providers. Oh, and by the way, did I mention that from a data transfer speed point of view and data transfer in essence, there are no egress fees with CivoStack at all. So let me give you a little bit of a comparison from a better value point of view. Our focus is on making sure that people can get the same amount of compute and storage and network and data transfer at a much more competitive cost. As I mentioned before, no egress fees and with very, very clear and transparent billing. No hidden charges, no other line that you have no idea what it means, and ultimately have a better quality of service for less and a much simpler engagement for the teams running that service within your companies. So I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation about the fact that we're talking about clouds, private, on-prem, public, and it's worth pointing out that Civo is in a position, having built the enterprise stack to run across all of those formats, to be able to provide a cloud that you want. Flexible, bespoke, value for money, and effortless, but across public clouds, across the 5 available public regions in North America and Europe. Private, so run a private deployment of Civo Cloud in your data center or have it hosted by Civo. Or if you've already had a recent infrastructure investment, just take the software and run the private deployment of Civo Cloud on your own hardware. And then from an edge point of view, run private edge instances, which are ideal for remote sites, such as manufacturing and labs. But let me stress this again. CivoStack Enterprise has been built by a team and its leaders who have started data center businesses. They've built CSPs. They've debundled telecom exchanges and been scarred by the evolution of IT over 25 years, which means that the user experience is paramount from Civo, and the software has been built with this in mind, and all the bumps and glitches ironed out. So much so that the CivoStack Enterprise platform, as I said, runs across all of those different types of clouds. Same stack, same software in public, private, and edge, without the need to refactor apps or learn new platforms. And from a flexibility point of view, deploy where it adds the most value to your business. Bespoke it and configure it tailored towards your needs. And from a value for money point of view, get a much better return on investment when compared to other options as described earlier. And then effortless because it's fully managed and maintained and updated and supported 24/7, 365 days a year. I'm going to go out on a limb, but I'm very confident when I say this, is that Civo is, in that sense, unique because the on-prem software is the same as its public cloud. It can move workloads between the two. And as a result, anyone at any point in their cloud journey can use the software that suits them where they are most comfortable. Yeah, it's better value, faster and simpler for the user. Value-added services are provided by the partners. I've already mentioned it runs on new and existing hardware. It creates a recurring revenue model for the people who deliver those services and operates at enterprise scale. And in essence, from my experience of working at VMware and with the hyperscalers in my past life, the CivoStack Enterprise is an upgrade on VMware, where VMware was coming to an end. Civo starts before that and runs much further into the future. And it's a lot less expensive than the hyperscalers themselves. And I'm going to leave you now with a personal story. And this is personal to me, but it has a lot of relevance to the way in which people will make decisions in life, personally, but also in a business life. And I'm going to leave you with this before I hand over to Dinesh. We'll then go into a much deeper dive around the technology. And hopefully this gives you some nice context. So I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis in my 30s, which is an autoimmune disease, which you often see prevalent in old age pensioners. And in hindsight, it was my body telling me to change my lifestyle, or at the time, I didn't realize it. And the first drugs I was prescribed was called methotrexate. And it's known in pharmaceutical language and doctor's language as a disease modifying drug. So it doesn't cure anything. It just reduces the swelling and the pain. And when I read through the side effects, which are quite extreme, I chose not to take that. And I went to see my GP for a second opinion. And they prescribed me another disease modifying drug, a drug called chloroquine phosphate, which had milder effects, apart from the fact that the drug itself burns out the retina and makes you blind over time. So not really having a good option, I took the chloroquine as the lesser of two evils. Now, when having a routine eye test, my optometrist saw the changes at the back of my eye and referred me straight to a specialist in hospital. So I went to see the rheumatoid specialists, and I went to a particular one in London, and they insisted that I should keep taking the medication I'd been prescribed, and that was the best option, despite the side effects. I didn't like the answer, so I took a second opinion on the other side of the river in London and spoke to a holistic medicine specialist who recommended a natural approach of understanding my diet and having a healthy exercise regime. And going blind, or being in pain, or masking the disease were all options I preferred to avoid. So I changed all the diet, found I was allergic to eggs, removed those things from my day-to-day diet. And the most nerve-wracking thing in terms of making a change was having to come back off the medication and hoping that wasn't going to be back to those levels of pain I was in a couple of years before. But because I'd made the changes, when I came off the drug, there was no impact at all, no single regression ever since. And I'm fitter and healthier now than I've ever been. The moral of the story is that established market leaders or any profit-focused suppliers do not have your health in their best interests. In fact, the more unwell you are and the longer they help sustain that, the better it is for their pockets. So choosing what seems like an easy option based on being told to take drugs by such people may initially feel like a miracle cure, but it's simply masking the underlying issue, which only gets steadily worse over time. And therefore change and challenging majority thinking can feel a bit uncomfortable to start with, but with some discipline and perseverance, you end up in a healthier, less expensive, and more productive and agile lifestyle. So everything about this real life personal story reflects the choices being made in IT right now, where people will often choose what feels like an easy option, the drug option, of shifting to hyperscalers who lock you in, when simply adjusting your own environment and slightly changing brings much greater benefits at lower costs, and also enables people to stay in control and not manipulated by others' own vested interests. And this is just what Civo does. We give as much as we possibly can of the control and ease of use without any lock-in as we can. and make sure you have those options available to you to have a much healthier and agile IT infrastructure environment and a quality of work in running that environment. So I'll finish there. I'm going to hand over to Dinesh now to carry on with the deeper dive and drill down. And thank you for your attention. I'll see you in the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Henry. And yeah, a really personal story to share with us, and good comparisons with some of the things that Broadcom are putting the industry through at the moment. Moving on to Civo as a product and what we're able to offer. What I've got on screen is just a quick overview of some of the things that we're able to do and provide in all of those deployment methods that Henry's been talking about. So we have the ability to host Windows or Linux instances, virtual machines, as you well know and love in VMware, connect them to volumes and create and migrate workload that you are very well used to doing. However, where we like to think is we go above and beyond what VMware are offering and giving you an option for a cloud native offering as well. So built into the groundwork of the platform is Kubernetes, where, as Henry mentioned, you can get clusters up within 90 seconds. But we also include the ability out of the box to run object stores and the availability for then you to give that to customers to start uploading data to, using it as a source point and endpoint for your backups from cloud services that are out there like 365 email. Beyond that, we're also enabling customers to deploy machine learning workloads and make the use of data center grade GPUs, be that through our managed service Kubeflow, direct cloud GPUs attached to instances, both Windows and Linux, or managed endpoints where you're able to use the data center grade GPUs with your own data in your own data center and not have data being transferred out of the site to be used as part of training information and future public models. I just want to go over the dashboard, and I've got some screenshots here of what you would see when you are logged in and start using Civo. So this interface lives universally across all of the deployment models, and the region selector down in the bottom left can be used to choose between any of our 5 public data centers across US and Europe, or the private deployments that you have that could be hosted in one of our data centers and dedicated to your workload, or in your own existing data center, and even use and be deployed on the hardware that you originally have, and we can continue to use that. Regardless of that deployment model, you would be using this interface to be interacting with all of the services that are on offer. With simplicity at the core of everything that we do, this is all that you need to start launching a compute instance. Simply giving it a host name, a size of CPU, RAM, and disk, and an operating system, and off you go. We also show here options for GPUs, and both the capacity available for CPU and RAM and GPUs is updating in real time and giving end users the choice of only creating servers that the capacity within the site exists. So that if someone is using an NVIDIA A100 and a full set of a hardware is being used, end users will get a good error message and not be given the option to launch compute instances with GPUs attached until an existing workload is scaled down and allows a new workload to come online and consume the GPU. GPUs are a huge source of interest at the moment. There have been huge number of orders placed, and enabling end users to use them is of high interest. So I've already spoken a lot about attaching that to a compute instance, but you're also able to attach these GPUs to Kubernetes clusters and have things like the autoscaler drive the consumption of GPUs. So that when you have a specific workload that needs a GPU, it can be scaled up and a GPU attached to a node. The workload can run, be that a training job or an inference loop. And once the service has been used, autoscaler will allow the GPU nodes to scale down and for those GPUs to be put back into the pool and be ready to be used by a different workload. And that gives huge cost efficiencies for these really expensive GPUs while maintaining a safe multi-tenanted deployment environment. In addition to that, we also have our Kubeflow service, which is based on the open source Kubeflow deployments. This allows data scientists and data engineers to start interacting with the tools that they're familiar with, so Jupyter Notebooks, RStudio, VS Code, and start scheduling training jobs onto a Kubernetes cluster. They can then get all of the benefits that I described from native deployment to Kubernetes and allowing that reuse and efficient use of GPUs, but in an environment where end users don't need to learn the ins and outs of Kubernetes. Carrying on about Kubernetes, this is the similar page that we have with Compute, but now targeting launching Kubernetes clusters. So again, we give the cluster a name, how many nodes that we want to create, and then the size of resources we want to allocate to the cluster. Here we see that we've got different sizes of performance, CPU optimized nodes, as well as the same GPUs available for compute. CivoStack Enterprise has a fully software-defined network that allows the dynamic creation of segments that can be assigned to individual customers or environments. Think segregating your production environment from your staging environment. We also, software-defined, have a firewall that sits on the edge of these networks. Now, when we're talking about Kubernetes, we understand that a lot of deployments are for web applications. So our simple user interface has pre-selected options to open up only ports 80 and 443, or port 6443 from everywhere, or locked down to a well-known IP. So if you're connected from a corporate VPN, you're able to lock down API access to your newly created cluster quite simply with that one click. However, when you do need the complexity of deploying more services, we have the leave me alone, I know what I'm doing, and I will definitely come back and lock down the firewall later option there. While we have our software-defined network, we also have the ability to connect to existing VLANs in the data center. So when you've got existing hardware, say a database server with extra physical resources in it, be those disks, CPU, or RAM, that you need your virtualized resources to connect back to, you're able to do that with CivoStack Enterprise. You give a network a VLAN ID, and you ensure that that is trunked down to the relevant bits of hypervisors, and then any virtual servers created on that network have access to anything else on that VLAN. We also have the marketplace, as Henry mentioned, and here are the one-click views that you get to launch any of the 90+ applications that we have. As you start your cloud-native journey, this is a really good way of finding out what is on the landscape, trialing things out, and getting you up and running incredibly quickly. And then when you are more mature, be that GitOps or IAC tools, you can move these applications over into that management system. Being based on our public cloud offering, all versions of CivoStack Enterprise also come with a dedicated quotering system. So if this is an individual customer or an individual account or user group for a customer, each has an individual quotering system. Now we find this mostly useful when customers are getting used to deploying scripts or GitOps-based architectures, and they might have a runaway script. That then creates a load of instances and fills up a data center's worth of resources. So we are able to set lower limits for things like staging and development environments, but then give higher levels of access to a production environment, allowing you to scale up as you need. The front end is also multi-tenant ready. So here I've got two teams for this demo organization, Team 1 and Team 2. We mostly see customers using this for segregation of workload. So think of this as a production account, production team, a staging team, and a development team. And you're able to restrict access for individual users to only the team and therefore the infrastructure that they are responsible for managing. Civo is the same infrastructure and the same software deployed, be it public, private, or on software only, And these same tools and same documentation are able to be used against any of those deployment models. So the CLI is there and online for customers to use, as well as our Terraform provider. We have a REST-based API and Crossplane and Pulumi providers as well. Just highlighting some of the capabilities of our virtualization stack, you're able to deploy both Windows and Linux VMs with multiple disks attached. We have the ability for live migration in between individual hypervisors and high availability. So when there is a problem with a single hypervisor, that any workload on that machine is automatically started on other hypervisors within the site. We have the ability to pass raw GPUs onto the instances, and this is a huge benefit from a security model, where there is no such thing as time slicing or anything like that within Civo, and it's a really good security wrap in these multi-tenant environments. We are able to connect to existing SANs or deploy into a hyper-converged environment, and our software-defined network only requires a handful of VLANs to be trunked down to all hypervisors. So in day-to-day operation, we won't be needing constant access into the network switching layer at the data center level. We're also security ready and have ISO 27001 certificates, PCI DSS, and our SOC 2 audited on a regular basis. Just wanted to give a quick high level of the various architectures involved in CivoStack. So this diagram here is that single pane of interface between all of the deployment models, be that our public cloud or any of the dedicated private clouds that can be deployed. They're all accessed through our single Civo API, and our dashboard, CLI, all use this. And if you needed to build your own interface in front of a private deployment, you're able to interact with those APIs directly and put your own skin on the dashboards that we have. This should be a fairly standard diagram that you've seen before about a front-end data network and then a dedicated storage network, and then the internet access out on the side. When deployed in a hyper-converged environment as well, we do recommend having a separate storage fabric to ensure that there is segregation between management and data traffic from storage traffic that we use for ensuring replication and resiliency of data. This is a very quick overview of some of the hardware that we recommend starting with for CivoStack Enterprise. And the amount of compute is really scalable. So if you do have a requirement, please reach out and we'll have a conversation. As we aren't basing licensing around the actual spec of the hardware, we try not to insist for customers to change the CPU counts or memory counts to work around any licensing restrictions. Our goal is to ensure that you're able to deploy the most green, energy efficient, and high density hardware into a data center. And we've seen deployments with up to 128 cores per server and 1.5 terabytes of RAM to be shared across virtual machines. We do have a tool that allows migration of existing VMs over from VMware into Civo. And as we're able to reinstall hardware, once you've fully migrated a single hypervisor of VMs over, you're able to then reinstall that as Civo and carry on a migration. I have a quick video to show of this, so I'll just kick that off now.
Migrating your VMware instances to Civo. Today, we're going to guide you through a straightforward process that will seamlessly transition your VMware instances to Civo's cloud platform. Let's get started. First, let's ensure our current VMware instance is running as expected. For the purposes of this demo, we'll be moving a virtual machine running Nginx. Now, we'll access the VMware instance's console and demonstrate a running Nginx server. On the VM's console, log in using the credentials. Once in, we'll run the curl localhost command to verify Nginx is operational. Next, let's confirm the web page is active. We'll now open a web browser and navigate to the VM's specific IP address. We're ready to start the migration to Civo. Head over to the VMware Importer tool at Civo's website. Now log into Civo using the Continue with Civo option and enter your relevant credentials. Once in, select the ESXi import option and enter the necessary ESXi host and user details. Be careful with the password entry. For this demo, I have selected the demo region, whereas you'd be selecting your own private region or one of the Civo public regions, if applicable. In the importer, I am going to select the default settings for this demo, but you can select other options for network and firewall if required. Next, click on Fetch Data to retrieve your VM information. Then, in the table that appears, select the VM you wish to migrate by ticking the box next to the desired VMs. You can override the defaults if you wish to migrate an instance to a different region, network, or firewall. Finally, initiate the migration by clicking Import to Civo. This will start the process of importing your instance to Civo's platform. Once the migration is complete, we'll connect to our new Civo instance. Use SSH to connect to the provided IP address for the CivoStack instance with the login credentials. After successfully logging in, we'll verify the Nginx server's operational status. This will ensure everything migrated correctly. The final step is to access the Nginx server through the new CivoStack instance IP address to confirm it's up and running. You will also get the ability to create the IP addresses in the subnets of your choice, should you want to keep the IP address unchanged. And that's it. You have successfully migrated your VMware instance to Civo. For more information and support, please contact our support team. Thank you for watching.
Great. So that link there that I've got up on screen is a link to that video if you did want to share it after the call. I wanted to give a quick overview of one of our customers that we've helped really get the most out of the hardware that they had on site, defense.com. So not only are defense.com using our public cloud regions to deploy a front-end web application on our cloud-native tools, including Kubernetes, autoscaling, and object storage, they also have a private cloud deployment where we've helped spec out the various CPU, RAM, and disk combinations to ensure that their use case can be easily supported and allow for rapid growth in their own data center. This has meant that they have been able to get the benefits of a public cloud deployment across multiple geographic regions, but have been able to tailor and get a cost-effective hardware deployment for the workloads that need it. We're also working with defense.com to get the accelerated GPU-based insights into the data that they are processing. I just want to end by reminding you of all of the ways that we can work and deploy Civo. So that's on the public cloud in our 5 regions, a private cloud where the hardware is dedicated to yourselves and provided by Civo. That can be either in a data center of your own choice or in one of the sites that we have already, but ensuring that it is dedicated and only deployed, only your workload is deployed to it. If you have an existing hardware investment and you have a few more years to run of that, you can get the software-only stack, where we will install all of the capabilities we've showed today onto that hardware and allowing you to migrate from VMware over onto that hardware empowered by Civo. Or as smaller edge deployments in sites, manufacturing sites or labs, that's of huge interest at the moment when there are GPUs to allow for inferencing to be done on site very close to the data. If you have a huge amount of cameras that all need to be doing processing, rather than sending all of that data out to the cloud for processing, that can be done locally in the manufacturing site or the lab, and only key information sent up to services hosted into the cloud. I think that's everything that I have. So Sophia and Henry, I don't know if we've had any questions from the crowd and that we want to answer.
We actually have across a few different platforms. It looks like we have a number of questions. So the first one I'm going to go ahead and put on the screen, and I'll let you guys choose who wants to answer it. But the first one is, does Civo integrate with Veeam for backups?
It's going to be a very long answer, but yes. I don't have much more to say on that.
Awesome. Moving on to the next one. And if anybody has any additional questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll get them up and on the screen as well. The next one is, are DFW and load balancers included or are these add-on costs?
The answer is yes.
They are included.
Very quick answers. Awesome. Moving on to this one. This one may be a little bit longer. How is Civo priced for CSPs?
Can we just say yes and move on, or do you want to give a more detailed answer this time, Henry?
Well, it is priced on a pay-go virtual gigabyte RAM basis. So, and the more that's consumed, the cheaper it becomes. So it rewards the usage and only for what you use.
And that's based on an hourly consumption of VRAM as well. So because we've got that architecture where these private deployments are connected back up to the cloud for deploying and managing the infrastructure, we're able to collate that information and give a nice billing interface for CSPs as well. So they don't need to be integrating custom solutions every time.
Perfect. I'm going to do some rapid fire ones. So how many virtual machines does Civo scale to?
300,000. It's mostly dependent on the hardware that's deployed in the site and available to actually host the virtual machines.
Perfect. And it looks like I have about 3 more. These may be a little bit more in depth. A hypervisor is just a hypervisor. What makes Civo better apart from the price?
I kind of agree with that question. I don't know, Henry, do you want to take it?
I'll talk about it from a commercial point of view. Yeah, a hypervisor, and we are as good as the rest. But what we offer is a cloud-native future with advanced functionality such as machine learning and AI capabilities, and it's packaged and used in a way that makes it easy for both the end user and customers and resellers to use it. So, and it's all in a price that's significantly below the other alternatives. That's my commercial position. If you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think you've covered the functionality really, really well. In addition to that, it's also about the ability to run this at scale as well. So being built for a public cloud and all of the scaling challenges that a public cloud requires, deploying that into data centers for CSPs to use means that the operational overhead of running something like Civo is significantly lower because it's been designed to run at this sort of scale from the ground up.
Perfect. Moving on to the next one. How does the sizing work? What's the best way of understanding the scale we need based on our existing VMware estate?
So I think we can work with RV tools or similar tools to work out what you're actually using today. But I think the best thing to do is to reach out to us. As I mentioned, we don't incentivize you to make tech decisions based on licensing models. So at the moment, I'm talking to a lot of customers who are saying that they are deploying CPU cores just to make the best efficiency of how VMware are licensing the platform. And historically, they used to deploy low CPU counts and high amounts of RAM, again, making technical decisions driven by commercial needs. We want to get away from that, and being very sustainability focused, we want to make sure that you can get the highest density amount of infrastructure into a single U in the data center, because that's the most energy efficient way of deploying it, running VMs on it, and you don't need to cool all of that extra heat that's provided by power supplies and everything. So as I said, getting up to 128 cores or higher and 1.5 terabytes of RAM or higher can be decisions that you can make because the commercial model is designed to support that.
Perfect. Anything else to add, Henry? Moving on to the last question.
Nope, Dinesh, you're spot on. No more to add.
Perfect. And this is our last one. Our state is all legacy infrastructure as a service, discrete VMs running in a vSphere cluster. One hurdle is moving to cloud native and true DevOps that slowed us down. Is the requirements within vSphere needed to IMP?
I assume that might be implement, would be the guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we allow you to run those side by side with no extra tools like Tanzu to be deployed. So in that VMware deployment model, you've got the core things that VMware does incredibly well on the vSphere and the VMs, and then it feels like some of these other tools have been tagged on like Tanzu. So having those two things in Civo, be that managed databases, managed machine learning, instances, and cloud native, all built in from the ground up and supported with the interface as first-class citizen, makes that migration process a much easier for customers to implement.
Perfect. I think that's all of the questions we have at the moment. But if anybody hasn't had a chance to ask their question or would like to learn more, I highly encourage you to check out the Civo website, which can be found at the bottom of the screen here. There are quite a few different contact us forms. Feel free to reach out. We'll make sure that it gets over to our team. Ooh, I'll hide this too. In the meantime, Dinesh and Henry, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And again, we will see everyone on our next webinar. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.